With the single-family zoning change on the brink of a decision, prices rising and more multiple offers happening, there seems to be some serious changes about to take place in our market. As this is our market update video that we shoot every single month, like always, we have our curated report in the description that you can download. When you request it, I'm gonna personally send this to you and answer any questions that you have. We're not gonna go through all the data and all the information here on this video, but rather there's a ton of good information in there for you to help understand what's happening in this market. So we're gonna be breaking this video into two different parts. The first part is all stats, talking about numbers, talking about charts, looking at the information and knowing what is kind of going on in the city based on different property styles, based on just the city itself. We hit a new benchmark price, which we'll get to, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about what has happened with the rezoning, where things are at with that. But let's take a look at the numbers, because the first thing you're gonna see on this chart is the green line on top. It's thin, it's small, it is tiny over there, but it represents a very large thing that has happened. That thing is breaking past the $600,000 price point for the benchmark price in Calgary. That is a big deal. That is a 10% growth year over year compared to last year. And I actually thought we might hit that by the end of 2023. I was wrong. It took us till April 2024, but we are there. That is what's happened. Good or bad, whatever you believe, it is what it is. That's where we are at. Now, the one thing I noticed on this slide is right down on the bottom here. As you can see red, and that's not necessarily a good thing. And what that indicates, because if you look backwards on all the other years, you're not gonna see any of red showing whatsoever. In fact, there's a gap, and 2022 was super close, 2023 was super close in these months, probably right around the April, May, June, somewhere in there. But this year, we broke past. And what that means is there are more sales than there is inventory in the city. That is a big deal. We've seen this in charts for property types. Like I've seen that for detached homes over the last little bit, couple years, but we've never seen it for the city. That's a big thing. That is showing just pure demand for the city when we're looking at everything right now. And where's that demand coming from? People are still moving here. Despite increased prices, despite maybe some drop prices in other provinces, things changing, people still move to Alberta. And in Q1, Alberta was the highest, over 4% growth in the Q1 2024 compared to all the other provinces. So what does that mean? Well, that means at the end of the day, prices are going up and supply is gonna stay tight. Now, when you break it all down and you look at sales by price range, now this is year to date, so all of the January, February, March, and April, you can see the blue lines are this year. A big jump from 7 to a million, small jump from a million plus, and I mean, it's all relative. The only one that we've seen decrease compared to last year is 300,000 and less. And frankly, that's just because there's less product priced at that price range. So those are all sliding up into different price ranges. Now, when you look at the months of supply by price range, so how many months are available for the market, everything from under $700,000 is under 1 month's worth of supply. 7 to a million is sitting at probably like 1.1, 1.2, and then $1 million is at 2 point, maybe 6 or 7. That is flirting with a seller's market too, because if you remember, between 2.5 and 4, that's balanced. 2.5 and below, that is a seller's market, and that is where we are technically flirting with right now. And wow, like that means the whole city, all price points are flirting with a seller's market or are in a very, very strong seller's market. So what does that mean? Well, not everywhere is going to be the same. Not every condo is going to sell quickly like that. Not every $1.8, $2, $3, $4 million home is just going to be gone. there is still some serious fundamentals. You have to look at the community. You have to look at what's happening in the neighborhood. You have to understand this, but locally in your area. Just like you can't say, here's the Canadian real estate stats and here's what's happening, and then apply that to Calgary. Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And I have so many, not arguments, but conversations in the comments with so many of you because you look at these national stats and just think that it applies to every single city. Well, it doesn't. There are fundamentals that are different in Calgary, but then there are fundamentals that are different in each neighborhood in Calgary. So understanding what's happening in your neighborhood is just as important as understanding what's happening in Calgary when comparing it to across Canada. So then if we actually go a little bit further and look at that months of inventory for the whole city, we are sitting at 0.94 months of inventory, or the absorption rate. So again, the whole city roughly is turning over every single month. What you see on market today will most likely not be on market in 3 to 4 weeks. So how can you plan a move? How do you plan a transition? Well, with a lot of strategy and a lot of conversations. And that's where we come in. So if you're planning on that and you want to make a change, email us, info@chamberlaingroup.ca, or go to the contact URL in the description. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure that out. We've done it before a lot of times, and we can help you make that change. But that a month of inventory, the absorption rate is really, really low when we're looking at the city. And then when you break it out to all the property types, they're all very, very low as well. We'll break out each of these in a little bit, but that's kind of what's happening when you look at all the different property types from detached, semi-detached, townhomes, and then apartments. Now, let's take a look at sales per month. As of April, we had 2,881 sales that happened. Now that's up from last month at 2,664, which is great, more sales. And when you actually look at this all broken out compared to over the last 10 or so years, we are pretty high up there in terms of how many sales are happening. Then if you look at the number of listings that came on the market, we can see right now we're at 3,491, which is great. That's a decent number of properties coming on. However, when you look at the spread of the rough location of where the number of sales lands over the last 10 years, and you look at the number of new listings coming on, it is much lower than where the sales are, which is exactly why we saw the red in that first chart. There's a lot of sales happening compared to what the inventory and the new listings are. And here's the inventory. It is still the lowest that we've seen. The lowest that we've seen. And again, it all comes down to supply and demand. I feel like a broken record when we talk about this, but I don't know what else to say because there's so much demand on our city. And that's a big part of all of these changes that are coming up and the rezoning. There's just a lot of tension around it. And I understand it, and we'll talk about that. But a lot of that has to do with this lack of housing, the lack of inventory. We're not the only city to feel it right now. There's a lot of cities that are feeling that lack of inventory. However, there's a lot of cities that aren't feeling, the high number of sales that we're feeling as well. Because you got to remember, we had the most number of people coming to Alberta still over the last quarter, Q1 of 2024. And there was a really great article that I ended up finding that came from the BMO Real Financial Progress Index. And it said that majority, about 72% of aspiring homeowners are waiting until interest rates drop before purchasing a home. So are you in that boat? I just want you to give me a thumbs up in the comments if that is you, because I do want to get a sense of this. That 72% is a 4% increase from 2023. So there's real rising concerns about the cost of living, inflation, overall financial situations over the past 3 months. Now this is what the article also said, 13% of homeowners, aspiring homeowners, plan on purchasing a home in 2024, and 26% plan on doing so in 2025 or later. So there's a lot of people that are delaying this process when we're looking at that. Well, again, let's take a look at what is actually happening in Calgary, because this is a national interview or stats, but what is happening in Calgary in terms of the sales? Are we seeing sales dropping? Because I've seen Others use this article saying, oh, that's why we have a lack of sales right now. But when you look at Calgary, we don't have a lack of sales. The average over the last 10 years was 7,200 sales year to date. So that's the first 4 months of the calendar year for each of these years. We're sitting at 9,330 sales year to date. Last year, we were just over 8,000. Year before that was actually 12,000, almost 13,000 sales. It was a crazy year, 2022. And 2021 was at 9,145. So we are actually have the second highest year of sales that we have seen over the last 10 years, where again, 7,200 is that average. So that's right around this middle, because 8,200 is here. So it's right around this middle. The only time we saw a higher number was 2014. Again, that was another momentum year. Let's call that. That's a good word. Momentum year. I am really curious. If you were planning on waiting before purchasing a property and you're waiting for interest rates to increase, just put a thumbs up, little thumbs up right there in the comments, because I want to see that and interact with you. But remember, we have this report you can go and download. If you want information on Airdrie, Cochrane, Chestermere, Okotoks, other things, other places, more stats, go grab that in the description because it's going to be good. But I want to jump into the property types. We're going to start with detached homes. They saw a benchmark price as of last month at $749,000, which is a 13% year-over-year increase and an increase of about $47,000 from January 2024. That's a lot. And you can see when it's broken down in the price ranges here, the number of sales year to date, the 7 to a million range is very, very high when you look at that blue line. And again, that's because the benchmark price is now basically $750,000. Anything under 7, it's a lot lower, especially that 5 to 6. If you're trying to find a detached home under 5 or 550, it is getting really, really tough. And you're looking in some rougher areas, you're looking at smaller homes. There might be some that you'll find, but it's changing and it's changed quickly. So that's something to be really aware of when you're looking at what's happening in our market. Now, the months of supply, again, 2.5 is that benchmark, which is right here. There's nothing, no price point in the city that is in a balanced market. Everything is sitting in a seller's market, so much so that, take a look at this, between, let's call it 400, which again is a hard market, but even the 500 to 700,000 price range, 6 to 700 is sitting at, it looks like about 0.6, 0.7 months of inventory. So that's your 3 weeks. Anything that comes on of a detached home between 6 and 700, it's gonna be most likely gone within 3 weeks. That's including the great stuff and the not so great stuff. That's what it is. And when you look at new listings by price range, the stuff that's coming on the market, detached homes that are coming on the market, clear majority are between 7 and a million. Which makes sense. Again, that 750 price range that we have. Now, semi-detached. Semi-detached properties had a $668,400 benchmark price as of last month, 13% year-over-year increase, and that's a $43,000 increase since January of this year. They have a months of inventory of approximately 0.82, not approximately, that's what it is, 0.82 months. So things, again, are moving within that 3 to 4 weeks. And you can see for semi-detached, this is the first time, actually maybe a little bit, maybe just April, May last year, there was more sales and inventory. You can see a little bit of red right there, but you can really, really see that red line, more sales than inventory. So much so, last month, sales, there was 255 sales and only 208 inventory by the end of the month. One of the things with detached, semi-detached specifically, is it's kind of hard to price them, because sometimes you can find, if you're looking at a semi-detached, so the newer infills, inner city, they're kind of still pushing up against that $1 million mark. Sometimes, if you try to price over $1 million, like, it's kind of a magic number that's just a little bit hard to do when you're attached. If you're a detached, some of those could go for 1.3 to 1.8, even more, easily more. But some of these semi-detached, depending on the area and the neighborhood, if you're having a hard time selling those, let us know. We can help you. We can help you figure it out. We're not here to step on toes of relationships that you have with agents, but if you are looking to make a change and you need something, advice, whatever, we can do that. However, that $1 million range is just kind of a benchmark still, a price point, a barrier for some of these semi-detached properties. Because you can see a lot of semi-detached are selling in the 500 to 600, which is not necessarily the new infill type stuff, but that 7 to $1 million, there's a lot of places that's sold. So much so, it's probably 200, I don't know, 225, 230, something like that is so far this year of how many places have sold. And when you look at months of inventory, the supply, the only one, actually this comes to my point, the only one that's in a balanced market that's not in a seller's market is over $1 million. $1 million plus is sitting over 3 months of inventory, meaning it's much more of a balanced market. So if you're looking for a price range of, let's call it 1 million to 1.2 of a semi-detached property, that means it's attached, you're gonna have some negotiation room. They're sitting a little bit longer. They got 3 months of inventory on the market right now. But as soon as you drop under $1 million, then it drops drastically to about 1.2 or so months of inventory. That's a big difference, really, really big difference. And again, it's that $1 million mark barrier for semi-detached properties. Now, new listings by price range, a lot more places coming on under $1 million than over $1 million, which makes sense. But townhomes, oh my goodness, townhomes. Townhomes have really had their year and they're going to continue. Out of all of the different property types, townhomes have the lowest months of supply, months of inventory at 0.72 months. They are sitting at $458,100, a benchmark price, which is a staggering 20% increase year over year. And from January this year, there's about a $32,000 increase from January 2024. And this is probably the chart I was referring to where you see more red than any other chart, because townhomes that were hot last spring, and they're even hotter right now. At 0.72 months for the whole market, there's a lot of red right down in this bottom part here. And that's just showing, because there was 483 sales last month, there was 518 new listings, so pretty much everything sold, but at the end of the day, there was only 338 homes, townhomes available, and the 483 sales. So that's really, really skewed and shows a lot of demand for that property type. When you break it down on price range, anything under 500, there's a lot of sales. There's a lot of sales. You can definitely find some great townhomes under $500,000 in the $300,000 and $400,000 range, but the 300 range is getting a little bit more scarce because, again, if you add $30,000 to the benchmark price in 4 months, well, that could easily slide a 360, 380 townhome up to 410, and that's where it's going to see, and you're going to start seeing that in these charts over the next coming months. Over $1 million, well, you got 8, 9, 10 months of inventory. There's a lot. There's really no sales. I mean, there might have been one if you look there. One sale, but it took 10 months to sell. Anyways, everything is under 2 months. $1 million under, everything is under 2 months, and so much so that it's like half a month in some areas. New listings, you're seeing a lot of new listings come on the market between 400 to 500, and fewer between 500 to 600. But that price point will slowly shift if we continue on the path that we are on, with people coming here, the demand, all the fun stuff, right? And finally, apartments. Apartments are kind of an interesting thing in Calgary. They always have been, they always will be. Right now, the benchmark price for apartments as of last month was $346,200, which is also a staggering 18% year-over-year growth, and we've seen about $22,000 increase since January 2024. Their months of inventory is sitting right around 1.16 months, and you can see they don't have more sales than inventory. So what the numbers look like is there was 822 sales last month, and 951 for inventory. So that's pretty good. And then when you look at the actual sales by price range, there is a lot of sales between 3 to 400,000. There's a ton of condos that you can find between 200 to 400 actually. So much so that there's probably 2,100 sales or so in that price range in the city year to date. So lots of options, lots of opportunity, but we are looking at, again, low months of inventory, and it's just a tight market there too. Some condos, I've heard stories from our agents when they're dealing with this, there are some condos that are easily going into like sometimes 15 multiple offers. Like there's a lot of people that are now considering this property type because the prices have changed so much. So there's a lot of emotion tied around the whole single family rezoning that's happening. And I understand it. I own a single family home, and it's confusing at times when you actually look at what's happening, what could happen. But the reality is change is inevitable. Change is a really funny word, isn't it? It evokes a lot of different feelings that we can have. Feelings of fear, uneasiness, exploration, excitement. Truthfully, it's very conflicting between the good and the bad. Sometimes you're excited for a change of scenery because you're going to go on holiday instead of changing diapers. I don't know. But that really depends on what is changing. Now, change is one of those things that isn't loved by many, many people. And the threat or the possible change of your zoning, it's more the unknown of what could be in your own backyard or next door to you. And that is the part that is really, really hard. It's not knowing what's going to happen. So what happens for us when we're thinking about change is we can go into fight or flight mode. And this is on the front brain. I mean, I had a pretty bad concussion a couple years ago, and so I've learned a lot about this on my own self. But when we go into fight or flight, it's protection. It's protecting what is ours, protecting who you are. Whether that's a child at a playground, and that's your kid or someone else's kid even at a playground. And it could be your home, protecting your home when the feeling, the need to protect, that which could change around you. When things are changing, you want to protect that, right? So I've got a question. Are you in a place where I can share something personal with you? I mean, I don't love unknown change. And that's just me personally. I don't easily embrace something new if I can't think through what could happen, what my options are, where it's going to look like. And what I can do during that process too, right? If something's changing, I want to know, what is it going to be? Because when something's forced upon me, I don't embrace that either very easily. It's not in my natural way of living and who I am. I'm the kind of guy that actually needs to think through the scenario. I want to understand what the outcomes could be, what the options are. Just ask Rebecca, ask my kids. That's how I roll. I have to think through that, and I need to have some certainty of here's what it could look like. When things change, that's hard. And the last year and a half for me was really, really hard with concussion. When you have a brain injury and there's change, well, that's even harder. So I really understand what all of you are feeling when we're looking at this, because I'm there with you when we're looking at this change of the rezoning. It is one of those things that, depending on what side of the coin you're on, whether you are for it or you're against it, I think ultimately everyone is a little bit nervous about what could be. And I think more people are asking for more time to consider the options, to come up with plans, to understand what it looks like, because it's starting to seem like time is really running out and this change is happening, and it kind of seems a little bit inevitable. It's just going to happen. Now, this article in the Calgary Herald that came out during the hearings, it had some great points. I mean, I spent hours watching a lot of you. If you're watching and you were at the hearings or you spoke, I probably saw you. I watched a lot of it. I wanted to understand what Calgarians were thinking, feeling, where they're coming from. I learned a lot. I thought there was some really, really valid points on both sides that were really, really great. But this article had some really good points. And the first one I want to talk about is, the more that I think about this and the more that I watched the hearings, it occurred to me more and more that this change is inevitable. It's going to happen. And the change of single family zoning in one way or another has already happened to Vancouver, Toronto, Edmonton, Halifax. It's underway in Ottawa, Regina, and Winnipeg. So it's not just here, and it's happening in other cities. In the US, California ended single-family zoning statewide last year. Oregon, Washington, Maine, and Montana have all done the same. And in 2020, Minneapolis became the first major US center to end single-family zoning, the article says. And it said that the city's housing stock has grown by 12%. Well, what did we just talk about? All of these stats is lack of inventory. If there's going to be more options, that could be a good thing. Now, I understand there's a lot of positive and negatives, a lot of unknowns in that, but that is ultimately that one thing, more housing options for people who want to be a part of our city, our incredible Calgary that we love. Well, that's a good thing. More options, more opportunities, more people to dive in and help us grow this incredible city that I love dearly. Now, the second thing I really thought was great in this article, he said that virtually everyone under 40 advocates for more diverse housing in single-family neighborhoods. And then on the flip side, many older people want the status quo, but a good number favor change, those who live in detached single-family areas. Well, here's my take on it. I'm talking to many younger Calgarians who have seen a sense that they're going to have a harder time coming up with the money to own as prices are continuing to increase. We saw $40,000 plus increase in value since January in many property types. They could be closer to the problem than those that have owned a detached home for the last 15 or 30 years. And basically, back then, they paid a fraction of what it's currently worth. And I don't blame them. They don't want things to change. They like how it is. Now, I'm not saying one of these is right and one is wrong. You have the right to have your emotions and your feelings. But what is happening is these two groups have very different perspectives on life. One is a survival and future potential type feeling and emotions and perspectives. The other is all about preservation. When these two perspectives collide and can't hear each other out, there's gonna be a breakdown in communication. It's just inevitable. It's just gonna happen. Now, as we venture into a future of Calgary that is changing, and as tens of thousands of you engage with our videos each month, which honestly I'm so humbled by, I want to make you a promise. I promise to share a perspective that allows all voices to be heard, shares truth from both sides, and to break down the communication barriers and the confusion that you might feel when it comes to this. There's many changes that are going to happen in our city as we continue to grow. Growing. That is a very, very hard thing to do. Growth is tough, but you can do it. You've done it before, and you can do it this time too. Calgary, you can do hard things. I think we're going to end the video here, but no, we're going to talk a lot about this topic, a lot of what's happening, and keep you informed on that. And this video here, you're going to like it, but let's keep talking.